Councillor Casket.
Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now consider the estimates for the Department of Municipal and Northern Relations. Does the Honourable Minister have an opening statement? The Honourable Minister for Municipal and Northern Relations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have some extended introductions, actually. I'm pleased to make a few comments on the 2024-2025 estimates and discuss some of the important activities of the Department of Municipal and Northern Relations. Also, perhaps some questions on Indigenous economic development as well. Before I begin, I'd also like to recognize the hard work of my department staff and the professional work that they do in collaboration with Manitoba municipalities, the City of Winnipeg, the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, the Association of Manitoba Bilingual Municipalities, Northern Affairs Community Councils, planning districts, fire services, mutual aid districts, nonprofit and community development organizations, also chief administrative officers, fire chiefs, and our many other clients. On the Indigenous economic development side, I'd also like to recognize the hard work of the department staff in supporting the establishment of this new department. With me today is my Deputy Minister of both Municipal and Northern Relations as well as Indigenous economic development, Bruce Gray, who will join me shortly. Also with me is Don Hallett, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Indigenous Economic Partnerships. On the M&R side, Nick Kulik, Assistant Deputy Minister. I also have with me Mike Sosiak, Assistant Deputy Minister and Executive Financial Officer. Finally, from my office, Director of Ministerial Affairs, Marty Gautron, is also joining us here today. I know that this good work is also being recognized by the communities and municipalities that we serve. Our government is committed to investing in communities across the province. Even before the 2024 budget, we started with our gas tax cut, providing millions in relief for municipalities. Municipalities keep community infrastructure and services running. Our cut to the gas tax has led to significant additional savings for municipalities with an estimated $3.75 million in lower costs for the duration of the freeze. Now I'm proud to say that after years of freezes and cuts, we are also permanently ending the previous government's funding freeze and investing in all municipalities across Manitoba. Each municipality will receive more funding than in previous years, and we are committed to growing predictable multi-year funding in the years ahead. Budget 2024 permanently adds a $47 million increase to the municipal operating grant, an amount that was only provided by the previous government as an in-year adjustment in 2023. This provides local governments with greater financial certainty and security in planning for their communities' needs. Our government also recognized the increased financial pressures that all municipalities are facing and will provide a 2% or $4.4 million escalator in funding to municipalities. These increases will yield a total of $221.1 million in unconditional municipal operating funding in 2024-2025, $140.6 million for the City of Winnipeg, and $80.5 million for all other municipalities across Manitoba. Northern Affairs communities will also receive an increase in operating grant funding for a total of $11.1 million in 2024. This will bring total operating funding for municipalities and Northern Affairs communities to more than $232 million. Budget 2024 has also committed $7.3 million in new capital funding through the strategic infrastructure basket, including $3.3 million or 2% increase in capital grants to municipalities to address cost pressures on infrastructure projects and allow municipalities to continue to advance core capital needs. $4 million or 20% increase to the Manitoba Water Services Board for a historic $24 million base budget to support the development of critical water and sewer projects in rural municipalities and address Manitoba's water and wastewater infrastructure deficit. These increases will yield a total of $167.7 million in strategic infrastructure funding in 2024-2025. $93.9 million of that is for the City of Winnipeg and $73.8 million for all municipalities across Manitoba. This is in addition to the recent commitment of $10 million in one-time support to the City of Winnipeg for critical sewer pipe crossing repairs near the Fort Garry Bridge, advanced in 2023-2024, and over $56 million in infrastructure projects for critical infrastructure like airports, roads, fire trucks, and equipment. Beyond this, our government is committing to reliable, flexible, and stable funding to meet the needs of our growing population. Our government will be a true partner with the municipalities. Over the coming year and years to come, we will work with the municipal stakeholders, including the Association of Manitoba Municipalities and the City of Winnipeg, to establish a reliable and flexible multi-year funding model for programs, infrastructures, and maintenance that works for all local governments. Our government has committed $25.7 million for community development programs, which provides core operating and program-specific funding to strategic partners and neighborhood renewal corporations. Funding is also provided for application-based grant programs for nonprofit organizations and local governments for projects and initiatives that enhance communities across the entire province. Our government believes in revitalizing, supporting, and building healthier communities from the ground up to create healthier and safer neighborhoods in Manitoba. From the ground up, Budget 2024 is investing $12.5 million to support a new community development program called From the Ground Up. On April 29, 2024, our government launched the From the Ground Up Safe, Healthy Communities and for All program, which will focus on the revitalization of high-needs neighborhoods throughout Manitoba and community infrastructure and initiatives to support poverty and crime reduction efforts. The new program will repurpose funding from the former Building Sustainable Communities program, which was never sustainable in the first place. Grants under the new program will support initiatives in the areas of community capacity building, community economic development, well-being and recreation, and housing and safety coordination supports. Under the new program, applicants can apply for funding under the following 3 streams. 1, community renewal initiatives. 2, community spaces. And 3, healthy care, connected children and youth. In addition, the program will also invest in expanding and extending service for children and youth programs. The province has allocated $800,000 for non-application-based strategic partnerships to support after-school and weekend programs in high-needs areas in Winnipeg, Brandon, and Thompson. On the Green Team side of things, Budget 2024 also includes funding to support the Urban Hometown Green Team program to continue to support youth employment projects across Manitoba. The Green Team program, which creates summer employment opportunities for Manitoba's youth, will see an increase of $730,000 in 2024 to address the recent increase in the minimum wage. Funding is provided for a variety of community development projects that improve neighborhoods, promote community involvement, and help develop young leaders. The 2024-2025 estimates marks a reset in funding for our application-based grant programs. In the past, these programs were temporarily increased over the short term to mitigate the impact and spur economic recovery from the pandemic. However, given the need for prudent fiscal management to reduce the deficit, funding for these programs has been returned to pre-pandemic levels. Neighborhood renewal corporations in Budget 2024 will also provide $200,000 increase to annual core operating funding to support 12 neighborhood renewal corporations across Manitoba, 7 located in rural and northern communities, and 5 in higher needs areas of Winnipeg. This $200,000 increase for the 12 neighborhood renewal corporations bring the annual support for core operating funding from $1.7 million in 2023 to $1.9 million in 2024, and is the first increase in core operating funding for these organizations since 2016-2017. Effective and efficient land use and planning regulations can help boost economic competitiveness and promote sustainable municipalities when it comes to community planning. Manitoba is undertaking a comprehensive review of recent amendments made to planning legislation that includes public representations. We have engaged an independent consulting team to provide a comprehensive review with stakeholder involvement to ensure that the review of the legislation is impartial and non-biased as our stakeholders expect. The statutory review aligns with the government's mandate to review Bill 37, speed up approval timelines, and ensure local voices are respected. With French language translation, our government recognizes the founding role of the Francophone community in our province and is committed to protecting their rights and improving access to French language education, healthcare, and other services so that we are a truly bilingual province. As part of the new Canada-Manitoba Agreement on French language services with our federal government partners, Municipal and Northern Relations will increase its funding to the Association of Manitoba Bilingual Municipalities for translation services for Manitoba's designated bilingual communities by another $100,000. The largest increase in funding for these services in more than 20 years. This builds on our government's continued support for bilingual municipalities in adopting necessary bylaw changes to implement the AMBM's 3M maturity model for enhancing support for the delivery of municipal services in both official languages. On Indigenous economic development, for the first time in Manitoba's history, we have a department that is truly dedicated to making meaningful strides in Indigenous economic development. This is our Premier's words and actions. The economic horse will pull the social cart in Manitoba, which is really about a vision where all Manitobans benefit from the contributions of Indigenous Manitobans, business, and other towards the goal of economic reconciliation. Manitoba has the largest Indigenous population per capita of any province at 18%, and this population is younger and growing at a faster rate than any other demographic in Manitoba. Removing barriers to the full inclusion of the Indigenous peoples in Manitoba's economy represents one of the most significant economic opportunities for the province. Working closely with other departments, Indigenous economic development is adopting a whole-of-government approach to grow our economy by increasing economic participation and creating opportunities for Indigenous Manitobans and communities. Manitoba is a province with a significant undeveloped potential in our resources and our people. In this respect, it's a real have province. This is also true with respect to Indigenous communities and businesses. The potential impact of removing barriers to the full inclusion of Indigenous peoples to Manitoba's economy is one of the most significant economic opportunities facing the province. This new department has a mandate to work collaboratively with First Nations, Inuit, Métis, and partner organizations to improve economic participation and opportunities for Indigenous Manitobans and communities with a special focus on education and jobs. The department is comprised of 2 main program areas, the Consultation and Agreements Branch and Indigenous Business Development Branch, supported by a Financial and Administrative Services Branch. In conclusion, I will leave it there for now. Our government is dedicated to supporting municipalities and communities across Manitoba, as demonstrated by our commitments made in the 2024 budget. Municipal and Northern Relations will continue to help build stronger communities through ongoing education and support for local elected officials by providing funding to build and strengthen municipalities and by investing in programs that enrich the lives of Manitobans. Thank you.
We thank the minister for those comments. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? The honourable member for Lakeside.
Well, thank you, Honourable Chair, and I want to thank the minister and his department officials for being here today. Hope we can get some good information on the workings of the department and the estimate numbers. I'm sure, as some of you know, I've had some experience in the municipal world for 12 years, 8 years as council on my municipality, as well as 4 years as the Reeve, and then of course I spent 8 years on the Association of Manitoba Municipalities Board of Directors as well. So I got a good, got a bit of passion in that in the municipal world for sure. And I think you know that, Minister, that I've had some experience there and built some relationships over the years and still listening to the people and know a lot of the people that are still involved in municipal government. So I know there's a lot of things in this year's estimates across the department that are extensions from many years of work and planning by the department. But there's also many new directions that this minister and the new government are taking that I want to explore here today. So I want to have a thorough estimates discussion with the minister, and I'd like to take a global approach to the discussion. At the same time, I'll try and indicate to the minister and the department which areas I'll focus on today, so that the department can ensure that they've got the right officials at the table and be ready to that we can get the best possible answers for the public at this meeting today. Of course, the more quickly we get the good answers on the various topics, the more quickly we'll be able to move through all this information and get some details on the department's plans for their expenditures this coming year before the Legislative Assembly's members. I do want to express some concerns with some of the approaches of the new government, including some of the significant additional expenditures in the estimates and the budget. The significant borrowing that's being undertaken by this Premier and Minister, planning to add over $5 billion to the net debt since the release of last fall's public accounts. Billions more in debt in just the first year, while interest rates have skyrocketed since last summer. Something perhaps attributable to the Liberal Prime Minister's spendthrift ways. There doesn't seem to be much concern from this government about adding this much debt in such a short time frame, while interest rates have been higher than they have been in decades, and the inflation in Manitoba has slowed to below the Bank of Canada's target level, which suggests the economy is no longer keeping up with the government's spending plans. There seems to be a lack of urgency to grow the economy in these estimates. So I have a lot of questions about the priorities of this government, about what is in these budgetary estimates and about what is not in these budgetary estimates for the minister. Hopefully he can do some explaining of his positions and rationale for the decisions he's made. For example, within the estimates as a whole and within the minister's departmental estimates, there seems to be a complete lack of funding and priority for roads, bridges, and municipal infrastructure projects. There's a lack of investment in water and wastewater infrastructure. And the Building Sustainables Community Program and funding seems to be nowhere to be found within these estimates, not in the municipal relations estimate, nor anywhere else in the budget. I know in his opening statements, the minister mentioned that the Building Sustainable Community Fund was not sustainable, but I'd like him maybe to explain today how the $12.5 million that's in their budget versus the $25 million that the previous government had, how it couldn't have been sustainable. Same goes for Arts, Culture, and Sport and Community Fund. Doesn't seem to be anywhere in the department's estimates or anywhere else in the budget or estimates package. You recently announced a new program focused on revitalizing neighborhoods, but only for Winnipeg, Thompson, and Brandon. So I'd like to know why the minister is leaving all the other large and small communities out of that funding envelope. Why are the Paw, Dauphin, and Portage La Prairie and many other northern communities and First Nations being excluded from that funding? It is stated very clearly in your release that some of the funding is only for those 3 communities. As I pass this over to the minister, after my first questions, I'll just let him know I'd like to explain why he does not seem concerned about the high interest rates and the growing debt load. This minister's government is increasing spending in many areas while cutting others, like capitals for roads, bridges, and municipal wastewater projects, and of course, drinking water projects. And hopefully by the end of today, we can get the minister to explain why in a budget where spending is going up exponentially, why his department and municipal priorities do not seem to be getting the same level of attention. So that, Honorable Chair, would be my opening remarks. Thank you.
We thank the member. I'd like to inform everyone at a table for clarity that we're currently considering only the estimates for municipal and northern relations, and then afterwards, after we've concluded this section of the department, we will move then to Indigenous Economic Development section. Great, thank you. So under Manitoba practice, debate on the minister's salary is the last item considered for a department in the Committee of Supply. Accordingly, we shall now defer consideration of line item 13.1A contained in resolution 13.1. At this time, we would invite the minister's staff to join us at the table, and we ask that the minister introduce any staff in attendance that he hasn't already included in his opening remarks. Thank you. Please join us. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to introduce the additions, I introduced some of the staff that was joining me in opening comments. We're also joined here by Kevin McPike, David Newfield, and Natalie Kahn-Cooper.
According to our Rule 7816, during the consideration of departmental estimates, questioning for each department shall proceed in a global manner with questions put separately on all resolutions once the official opposition critic indicates that questioning has concluded. The floor is now open for questions. The Honourable Member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. And again, thanks for the opportunity to come today and pose some questions to the ministers and his Department of Municipal Relations here. Greatly enjoying the role as critic here, being something that I got a little bit of experience in. So I'm going to start with just some general staffing questions for the minister. And what political staff work out of the minister's office or within their purview, and if you could name them, and just a breakdown of their salaries, as well as what pay scale they're on. How many, if any, are on the executive salary schedules? And does the minister have any staff who are on secondment? And what are their salaries and who is paying for it?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just as an opportunity, before I respond to the last question the member posed when he talked about in his opening comments about not investing in municipalities, investing in Manitobans, and I think that was significant for us as a new government to be able to do that. We heard for the entirety of our time in opposition the strain that the freeze to municipal funding had and the effect that it had on municipalities. So that was significant for us to be able to address. And that was something that AMM had called for, as well as a lot of other communities as well, community members as well, to be able to do that in a real meaningful way. It's something that meant and would have a real impact for municipalities. So when we committed to not only ending the freeze, but the predictability of funding going forward as well was significant for us to be able to do that. And that is something that we campaigned on, we heard, we listened, and we acted. So we heard from municipalities about the real strain that the funding freeze was having for them. So we addressed that in a meaningful way with a 2% increase. And we'll continue to have those discussions on what it looks like going forward for funding model and predictability going forward. But also the other thing that we heard quite a bit was what the funding freeze, it wasn't just 1 year, it was over multiple years, and what that meant for the municipalities to have to play not only catch up to be able to do what they wanted to do in their communities, but just to kind of be made whole and how do they grow. And so we're in it with them as well. And when you talk about a government kind of having the backs of the front line of Manitoba, in this case municipalities, it was significant for us to do that and come to the table for them, but not do it in a top-down approach. It was also important for us to do that with them as well. So we were part of discussions to the development of what an escalator is going to look like going forward and what the percentage increases look like going forward for funding. And that was something that was very well received by municipalities and communities and just everyday Manitobans, is the predictability of what they could look forward to, because previously they could look forward to zero, and that's really not a prediction that anybody really wants to see. So when the member talked about kind of the investments that Manitoba is making, it was significant for us to do. And some of the questions that I would have, and we did have in opposition, is, well, if you're freezing funding for your municipalities and your deficit is growing as previous government was, then what were you really doing with being able to support Manitobans? And we really didn't see that. So it was a very welcome opportunity, and we were privileged enough to be able to form government and then bring those ideas forward in conjunction with the municipalities on a predictability of funding model going forward. And it was well received, and we see those, and you're going to start seeing those effects right from year one as well, is what that means for municipalities going forward, and what that means for communities all over this province. So it was significant for us to say, we have your back, we're here for you, and we'll continue to have those discussions with them at the table as well. Not a top-down approach where government's just going to dictate exactly what the funding model looks like or what the extent of funding is. If there's challenges, and not to say that government and municipalities and communities are going to agree on everything all the time, but we're going to be part of the conversation. So that was significant for us to be able to do, and it was welcomed. Before, and I do have the answer for the member opposite about the kind of the political side of our staffing, but I do also want to take this opportunity to thank Cam Blight as well. To thank Cam for his years of service, not only to AMM, but to his community as well. And I think I share that sentiment with members on all sides of the chamber. Cam, I first met him when I was in opposition. We had some excellent conversations. He'll hold your feet to the fire, which is something that good government should do. So that was very good to be able to do. And I thank him for his service. And it was just kind of, I think the conversation one of the last conversations I had with Cam before he stepped down was just about family. So I think it was important for him to be able to do that. So I wish him well, and I thank him for all his years of service. And I look forward to the fall convention of having new administration for AMM, leading AMM. So there's good conversation to be had. To answer the member's question, I do have one political staff, the Director of Ministerial Affairs, and he is on the SF7 pay scale.
The Honourable Member for Lakeside.
I thank the minister for that partial answer, and I can certainly appreciate his comments for Cam Blight there. He's certainly going to be, he certainly will be missed at the AMM. He was passionate about what he advocated there for. So my question again, Honorable Chair, for the minister. So are the political staff roles broken down by subject matter? Is municipal relations separate from Indigenous economic development? Can you give me that breakdown?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you for the question, and I apologize, the clock was running short of me there to be able to give the fulsome answer, and I wasn't sure if this was the place to actually say that, because I was informed that we were dealing with municipal and urban relations specifically and Indigenous economic development separately, but I could share that with the member opposite as well. So I do have the Director of Ministerial Affairs that oversees kind of both departments with me. So when it comes time to political staff, there is only the one political staff that works in both departments, the municipal and urban relations side as well as the Indigenous economic development side. One of the other questions that the member asked to was about secondments for the department, and I can say that we have no secondments coming into our department. But one of the things that I've realized, and I say the term one of these things many times because it just keeps reminding me that there's so many different things that we come up with day in, day out, is there was a real refresh, I would say, from the civil service when we formed government. And there was a real desire and a real kind of renewed energy to be able to move the work of government forward. So it's something that I encouraged and something that was very, very helpful. And our department staff in municipal and urban relations and the newly formed Indigenous economic development, which also has some folks that were different parts of government in previous years or previous work histories as well. That renewed energy and that expertise is something that as a new government was welcomed as well. And I will share this, something that really kind of bothered me in opposition when previous government would come to the table and they would table reports in the House, and they would table sometimes multiple copies of multiple reports and sometimes a stack of maybe 12 documents or 16 documents or what have you. And they would go through the procedural motions to have those reports introduced. There would be comments from the PC government at the time to say, oh, that's the hardest working minister in government. And to me, I really took kind of offense to that, because the work of a lot of those reports is done by the civil service, is done by people in the departments. And it's something that I remind them every day, and I say every day, and I talk about the great work that our department does, because as politicians come and go, a lot of the civil servants remain in place. And they may move on to different departments, but they really have a desire to work for the betterment of Manitobans. And that's something that's very important for all of us to remember, that as civil servants, as politicians that have the great honor of serving the people of Manitoba, is that in fact we are here for them. And the work should be appreciated. And there's a lot of expertise around this table. And I will say as well, there's a lot of expertise around all members of the chamber as well. As the member mentioned earlier, I mean, he has a significant background in municipal governments as well. So you were selected by your constituents to be able to bring those voices forward. And I'm not going to say they made a right or wrong decision, but the fact of the matter is you're here because of what you bring to the table. And I think that's important to remember across all of government. There's people that are in our world, in our boardroom tables, in our offices, in our government, that are there because of the expertise and the kind of professionalism they bring and the knowledge they bring to the table. So that's important for me to be able to acknowledge. And I will say, again, that was a pretty big beef for me to be able to hear those kind of connotations from the previous government, to say it's hardest working minister in government when they're tabling X number of reports, when really it was the work of the department. So I do want to be able to shout out the department. Now maybe I'll do that a few times throughout the afternoon here as well. But to answer the question about secondments, we have no secondments in either department, whether it be MNR or whether it be Indigenous Economic Development. And we do have one political staff member, my Director of Ministerial Affairs, that oversees us in both departments.
Before recognizing the honorable member for Lakeside, I just want to remind all folks here, questions and answers must come through the chair. The honorable member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So my question here now to the minister is, with reorganization of several departments into the current Department of Municipal and Northern Relations and Indigenous Economic Development, can the minister explain if this is being operated as a single department or two separate departments with one minister? Another part to that question would be, do all the political staff work out of the minister's office, or are some working in satellite offices? And are there any vacancies at this time as in the deputy ministers or assistant deputy minister roles?
The honorable minister.
Thank you, Chair. So on the organizational structure side of things, when we formed government, there was different departments and department titles and department responsibilities previously. Municipal Northern Relations, Indigenous Economic Development. Well, Indigenous Economic Development did not even exist. But on the reconciliation side of things, when we formed government, we kind of separated three different parts. Separated them in terms of the duties and responsibilities, but at the same time kept an over kind of sight of what we want to do. So the MNR and Indigenous reconciliation side now became Municipal Northern Relations and Indigenous Economic Development, which I'm the minister of both. The Indigenous reconciliation side is something that the Premier is the minister of, because it was important for us and for the Premier to articulate a government-to-government, nation-to-nation relationship when it came time to dealing with Indigenous communities. So we did that on the reconciliation side. Further to the question about vacancies, as I'm sure the public documents that we have here as well, it speaks to on the Indigenous Economic Development side of things. There is an assistant deputy minister, which in the older document says vacant, but that has been filled now. So there is no vacancies on the Indigenous Economic Development side of things in regards to the ADM. On the organizational structure chart for the Department of Municipal and Northern Relations, it previously had Municipal and Northern Support Services and the Northern Affairs, which had two separate ADMs, which is now compiled into being one ADM under Municipal and Northern Support Services. So that was kind of combined. And further to answer the member's question about, I guess, I'm sorry, I'm probably paraphrasing here a little bit, as to where they're housed is, it's one office. So I'm the Minister for Municipal and Urban Relations, as well as the Minister for Indigenous Economic Development. Bruce Gray is the Deputy Minister for Municipal and Urban Relations, as well as Indigenous Economic Development. And my Director of Ministerial Affairs is the Director of Ministerial Affairs for both departments as well.
The honorable member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. This is for the minister here. I just got one more staffing question. I got so much I want to go through here. Our time's limited, of course. But so what is the vacancy rate within your department now, and do you have a target vacancy rate?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So actually, the number is equivalent across both departments. So in the municipal northern relations side, the vacancy rate right now is 17%. And the the Indigenous Economic Development side is also 17% with the goal, and it's been reduced since last year. Last year was in the 20 percentile range. So the goal is to get that down to a vacancy rate of 12%.
The Honorable Member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. In the introduction of the estimates book on page 8, it states that employee-related measures are now tracked centrally. So can the minister and department explain where those are now tracked and what changes have been made in regards to staffing and employee-related measures within municipal relations? And can the minister tell us why the department staffing was reduced by 3 full-time equivalents? And can he explain what roles were cut? Are they new hires for the government? And the second part to that would be, can the minister tell us the titles of the positions added with those full-time equivalents and who will be filling those roles if they have already been filled?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just for clarification, we're looking to look at what document the member is referring to. So he's referring to page 8 of the supplement to the estimates of expenditure.
The Honorable Member for Lakeside.
Well, Chair, yes, it'd be page 8 in the estimates, supplement to the estimates. In the last paragraph, it states that performance measures have been updated to align with the department's mandate letters. Employee-related measures are now tracked centrally.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, and I thank the member for the question. So training used to be tracked in 2023, 2024 in the supplemented estimates of expenditure, but that now is recorded in the Public Service Commission.
The Honorable Member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So it also talks in the intro about tracking the government's strategic priorities and the department mandate. Can the minister outline his mandate and his department's priorities for the coming year and the next 4 years?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the member had asked about kind of the mandate that we have as government, or we've done so far, and what we plan to do for the next number of years. So I'll take some points out of the mandate letter, and of course it's also a public document that I received when I had the honor of being chosen to be the Minister of Municipal Relations, also Minister of Indigenous Economic Development. So some of the things that we had in there was about, first off, creating the Department of Indigenous Economic Development and being able to kind of advance economic reconciliation for Indigenous communities. So that was a priority of that department, and we're well on the way to being able to do that and have that engagement. One of the other mandated things we talked about was the multi-year funding model for municipalities so they can counter reliable funding. And it gets back to my comments that I made in my opening comments, but something that I'm proud to be able to say each and every day that we do is being able to address that on the 2% for one, but also the predictability that would give municipalities going forward. So that was important for us to be able to do as per my mandate letter. And when we talk about the mandate letter, it was a really significant all-of-government approach that we wanted to be able to do. So we had a lot of components of every department's mandate letter kind of work together, a working collaboration. That's truly what the all-of-government approach hopes to be able to do. Rather than say you have a municipal issue, just talk to the one minister, or you have infrastructure, just talk to one minister, you have health, just talk to one minister. But it's rather all a government approach to be able to do. So parts of what's been in our mandate as a new government for this past year really overlap a lot of different departments and a lot of different aspects of government as well. Another part of my department as well, part of my mandate is to expedite tree land entitlement. We're well on our way to being able to have those discussions. And for the first time, we've had to use the word reset on a lot of occasions because those relationships just did not exist under previous governments. So it's been met with a lot of optimism and a lot of excitement to be able to say that the mandate of our government is something that we not only had a year ago, but we're delivering on to this point, and we're going to continue to deliver on as well. So one of the other things that we had too is kind of the engagement strategy with the Métis Federation, First Nation as well. So we're well on our way to being able to do that in our department. But also something, and this is kind of really kind of a truly all-government approach, is being able to develop the infrastructure to improve northern airports for northern Manitoba too. So we were up in Wasegamak quite some time ago with the Minister of Infrastructure to be able to announce that we're actually going ahead with the process of building the airport for Wasegamak, Northern First Nation remote flying community that doesn't have any kind of access through airports in any way. And as we get into kind of freeze up here in the later parts of fall and early parts of winter, it's going to be a significant challenge. So that's, for us, that's important to be able to do across really kind of all levels of government. Another aspect that was in my mandate letter as well was to expedite the review of Bill 37. And that's been a very welcome interaction, if you will, with communities, really kind of highlighted by AMM, really coming to the table. And keep in mind, I mean, legislatively, we weren't mandated to do that for another year, but it was something that we heard from municipalities to be able to, this is something they wanted to see done. So we expedited that review process, and it's still, it's ongoing, but we're close to being able to develop and see the results of that review come forward rather quickly. But there's a lot of other things that we've done in terms of the mandate letter and the mandated part of our departments, and it's significant for us to be able to do. So we've done a lot of different things. I touched on the funding model for municipalities, a new park community center in Brandon, something that we've done, fund 40 firefighters across Manitoba and in the city of Winnipeg here, property tax rebates from the property tax bills at the outset. So a lot of smaller things, maybe not what you would call in some cases even high profile or immediate things, but there's a lot of rolling up our sleeves and getting to work for Manitobans. So that's something that we want to be able to do each and every day, and not necessarily out there looking to do just a government of announcements, but actually get the work done.
The Honourable Member for Lakeside.
Honorable Chair, thank you. Costs related to capital budget has increased by 735% year over year. Can the minister explain the increase and its impact on the departmental budget?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank the critic for the question. It was very important as well because there was something that was kind of flagged, if you will, by our department, and that's something when we talk about the Northern Affairs communities and the assets that were in the Northern Affairs communities were never reflective or on the books, if you will, of the provincial government. So, in order to bring those in line and to actually have them treated as such as assets for Northern Affairs communities, that was something that was brought on in March of 2023. And the increased amount is associated with amortization expenses and decommissioning of some of these assets, if you will. So it was important that we had a kind of a true reflection of the assets of what Manitoba has and what the Northern Affairs communities had as it reflects to Manitoba. And this cost will be recalculated each year, and the projected value will be reflected in the estimates of expenditure with the actual amortization of expenses recorded in the department's annual report and the provincial public accounts documents.
The Honorable Member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So we'll get into some of the funding programs that you talked about, the minister talked about in his opening statement. One was the Ground Up program. Couple of, kind of a two-part question here. What percentage of that 12.5 million is actually going to municipalities? How many have applied and been approved? And the municipal escalator funding, I'm curious to know how negotiations are going moving forward with this and how it impacts the budget for this year.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, and I thank the member for the question. It gives me a great pleasure to be able to talk about the From the Ground Up program and what the impacts it's going to have, what kind of the real world impacts it's going to have, if you will. So one of the things that's really exciting about the project is it gives the opportunity to partner not just with the municipalities, but a lot of organizations in the community as well to be able to kind of get more bang for your buck and be able to really kind of work together and take a real targeted approach to the issues that are in each. While we're a lot of common issues around across municipalities, there's a lot of uniqueness as well. So it gives the opportunity to be able to do that. Not just with the direct impact to the municipality itself, but with the organization in there, whether it be the root cause of crime and those kind of recreation issues that they want to be able to deal with. So there's a real opportunity to be able to kind of get together and really kind of work all levels of that funding and all levels of the $12.5 million from the Ground Up program. But also leads me to talk about the Manitoba Grow program that we have as well too, the $42 million in those that are directly for municipalities as well. And some of the streams that are in that program is to deal with public safety, flood prevention, infrastructure, roads, bridges, what have you, recreation infrastructure, water, wastewater. So there's a real desire to kind of work together, and every fund and every project that we bring forward for Manitobans, for municipalities, and for communities is really meant to work together as well. So there's a real opportunity here for the Manitoba Grow and the $42 million there and the $12.5 million from the ground up to be able to really kind of work together in communities to really tackle the challenges that they face each and every day. And there's it's also leaves that opportunity for municipalities and communities to take those dollars and really kind of target the issues that are affecting them personally. Like I said, there's a lot of common issues we have, but there's a lot of uniqueness in our communities as well. So out of the Manitoba Grow, out of the $42 million in the Manitoba Grow project or program to be able to deal with, can really complement some of the things that the $12.5 million from the ground up can do as well. So there was a large amount of intakes to those programs as well, which speaks to the challenges that are being faced by communities as well. So I think as a good government, we need to be able to come to the table with those municipalities and those communities to be able to help address that. So we addressed it in a way with the $12.5 million in from the ground up program, but significantly even more so with the $42 million in the Manitoba Grow project as well. Like I said, public safety, flood prevention, infrastructure, recreation. So there's a real desire on communities to kind of oversee and overlook a lot of different aspects of what they do and what they want to bring to the table, because there's a lot of projects out there and a lot of opportunities out there that they want to be able to go with maybe just a little bit of assistance or significant assistance in some cases from the Manitoba government. So it's important for us to be able to do that, and we're doing that from the ground up as well as from Manitoba Grow.
The Honourable Member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And before I close out of this department and move into the next one, I just want to give the Minister another opportunity here to answer the question that I just posed to him. And it was kind of two parts there. Again, I'll give him the opportunity. How are the negotiations moving along with the municipal escalator funding with municipalities? And with the Ground Up program, what percentage of that 12 million is going to municipalities, and how many have been have applied and approved?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank the critic for the question. And I apologize, I didn't address the funding part of your question in the first time around. But in regards to the dollar amounts that are being kind of given to municipalities, if you will, and when the member talks about 2 municipalities, part of the discussion is the municipalities are part of Manitoba, and municipalities are part of our communities as well. So there's significant contributions made from an all-of-government approach. So when we talk about the Manitoba Grow and the $42 million there, from the ground up, $12.5 million, Green Team, $6 million, the Water Stewardship Board of $24 million. Those are all part of what makes up our contributions to municipalities as well. $42 million, for example, Manitoba Grow is just for municipalities. So when we talk about that, we're at 100% to be able to deal with that. So our investment in municipalities is significant, as well as the $12.5 million and from the ground up. I know the members kind of looking for a line to be able to say this is the exact dollar amount that goes to whichever organization or whichever part of the community that he's looking for. But at the end of the day, it's a real investment in municipalities across all of Manitoba. And that's where we come from in an all-government approach, and being able to kind of have every aspect and every program we roll out to be able to hit a lot of different demographics in Manitoba, whether it be in all 4 corners of the province, to be able to kind of work together and leverage those dollars with partnerships with organization, the community, with municipalities, and what have you. So again, $42 million in Manitoba Grow, 12.5 from the ground up, $6 million in the Green Team, $24 million from the Water Services Board. So it's significant for us to be able to know that those are hitting home for municipalities. So that's a significant investment on our part, and again, in collaboration with the municipalities, because we've had the conversation as to what this means for them and the impact that it would have for them in their individual communities, and what that does, so to be able to create those partnerships. On the funding side of things, it's been an ongoing discussion, and it's something that's been welcomed by AMM and by the communities that are represented by AMM. But each and every day, when you get out there and you get out in the communities, and I mean, there's things you can see, and I'm sure the member can attest to the fact that we can look at things on paper, and it's one thing, but it's a different thing to actually get out in the communities and be able to talk to folks. And you kind of hear from firsthand the impacts that would have. So when it comes to the funding model, of course, it's been very well received about the predictability of the 2% increase that we have in the funding model, but it's an ongoing conversation. And it's not something that, as a government, you say, okay, we've had the conversation. This is a number that's locked in forever. No, it's a conversation that we have on an ongoing basis. So I'm looking forward to having significant additional conversations when fall convention comes around for AMM, and I'm sure the member opposite is going to welcome back maybe some folks that he hasn't seen in a while, to be able to chat with them there at the fall convention. And when we first formed government a year ago, one of my first events was in fact fall convention out in Brandon, which is an incredible experience for those of you that don't have the opportunity to go out there and engage. It's fantastic. And again, we were just in the early weeks of our government. So we went there with, this is what we want to do. This is the conversation we had in opposition, so we want to continue that on in government. So we did that. We had the conversation. This is what we heard. This is what we wanted to do, and we implemented that. So when the member talks about the funding model going forward, that's an ongoing discussion. And I mean, obviously, when we talk about predictability and something that was lacking under the previous government, well, I shouldn't say you can predict zero, but that's a very easy prediction to make under previous government. But going forward, you want to be able to have the conversation as to what that means going forward, because we have significant challenges as we progress. And so I think when we talk about the 2%, we look at that, and the conversation we've had around AMM and with communities out there is what an escalator would mean and what that means. And I think that's an ongoing conversation, because there's different challenges in different communities. So it's a big conversation to be had, but again, as good government, you're going to continue to have those conversations with your member municipalities, because that's the right thing to do.
The Honourable Member for Lakeside.
Just some closing comments, not really a question, but so we can move on to the Indigenous Economic Development. But I'll take that from the Minister that there has been no numbers as far as percentages or whatever increasing or escalating over time just yet. We hope to hear some of that good news in the very near future. The fact, the ground up, you mentioned the $12.5 million. Again, it's quite a bit considerably less than what the Building Sustainable Communities was. And of course, the Manitoba Grow is considerably less than what the MEDIP program was. So from that, I just wanted to put those words on the record as far as my concerns, and I have no further questions, so we can move in. Actually, I have lots of questions, but I'll wrap it up there so we can move into to the next department and get it wrapped up today.
Does the minister wish to respond, or we can leave it?
Yeah,
We can
no.
leave it there for the sake of time?
Yep.
Okay. So acknowledging you have many questions, but for the sake of time, we're moving on. We'll now move to the resolutions. Resolution 13.2, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $5,467,000 for municipal and northern relations, community planning and development for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2025. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.3, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $24,551,000 for municipal and northern relations, municipal and northern support services for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2025. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.4, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $437,749,000 for municipal and northern relations community funding for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2025. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.5, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $1,485,000 for municipal relations capital assets for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2025. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 13.6, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $97,284,000 for municipal and northern relations loans and guarantees programs for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2025. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. The last item to be considered for the estimates of this department is item 13.1A, the minister's salary contained in resolution 13.1. At this point, we respectfully request the minister's staff leave the table for the consideration of the last item. You can leave all your belongings though. The floor is open for questions. Seeing no questions, we'll put the final resolution on the floor. Resolution 13.1 rather. Resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $7,734,000 for municipal and northern relations administration and finance for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2025. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. This completes the estimates of the Department of Municipal and Northern Relations. The next set of estimates to be considered by this section of the Committee of Supply is for the estimates of Indigenous economic development. This section of the Committee of Supply will now consider the estimates of the Department of Indigenous Economic Development. Does the Honourable Minister have an opening statement?
Thank you, Madam.
Sorry, the Honourable Minister of Indigenous Economic Development.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it gives me great pleasure to actually make some opening comments about the Department of Indigenous Economic Development. It's something that it was a priority for us as government to be able to stand up kind of the the economic power of Indigenous business and development here in the province of Manitoba. So as we just came across or just came past our first year in government, so it was a great honor to be able to stand up this department and to be able to kind of have that engagement through the course of this past year, to see what we can do and to see how we can help and to see the incredible amount of ideas that are out there from Indigenous businesses and non-Indigenous businesses alike. The engagement has been truly awe-inspiring, and I think it's a great message to be sent to the rest of the country and to what we can do for Indigenous economic development here in the province of Manitoba. Again, as we mentioned earlier, I mean, pro capita, we have the largest Indigenous population here in Manitoba than any other jurisdiction. So it's a great opportunity for us to be able to kind of develop and build on that economic opportunity.
We thank the minister for those comments. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? The honourable member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and thank you to the minister again for getting the opportunity to pose a few questions on Indigenous economic development. Unfortunately, we're limited for time here today. I know it's an important department that's been set up here for economic development for Indigenous peoples as well as our northern communities. I truly believe that it's something that we have to find very important. Economic development was always a passion of mine when I was on municipal council. So this here is something that definitely hold close to me as well for our northern communities and Indigenous people, creating the opportunities that we have for them here in this province, and we know the opportunities are certainly there to be created. So those are my opening comments. I think I'll just try and get into some of the questions here that are important for the department so we can get this wrapped up as well. Thank you.
We thank the member. Under Manitoba practice, debate on the minister's salary is the last item considered for the department in the Committee of Supply. Accordingly, we shall now defer consideration of line item 20.1A contained in Resolution 20.1. At this time, we invite the minister's staff to join us at the table, and we ask the minister to introduce the staff in attendance. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to introduce the folks that are working at the table, as we mentioned, it's a very similar department to Municipal Northern Relations. I'm also joined here by my Deputy Minister, Bruce Gray, Assistant Deputy Minister, Executive Financial Officer, Mike Silsiak, Director of Ministerial Affairs, Marty Gautron, and also Don Hallett, the Assistant Deputy Minister for Indigenous Economic Partnerships.
According to our Rule 78.16, during the consideration of departmental estimates, questioning for each department shall proceed in a global manner with questions put separately on all resolutions once the official opposition critic indicates that questioning is concluded. The floor is now open for questions. The Honourable Member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and I thank the minister. I did have a number of staffing questions here, but I believe they probably got answered in the last round of questions, so I'll skip over those into some more important stuff. So under departmental responsibilities listed in the supplement, amongst other things, your department is responsible of implementing and expediting treaty land entitlement agreements. So can this minister tell us how many treaty land entitled claims and net acres have been processed in relation to lands that were formerly ag crown lands? And of the treaty land entitlement lands transferred, how many acres have been transferred that were not ag crown land? And can the minister describe the lands?
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank the member for the question. And as was mentioned earlier, actually, it was a different department, so I guess I should remind that the folks that are tuning in for this specific department is that in my mandate letter as Minister for Indigenous Economic Development, it was mandated to expedite TLE as well. So it was something that we took as a high priority. So the member had asked questions about some amounts and what have you. When TLE was first signed in 1997, it was 1.4 million acres that were kind of allocated for the TLE process. And as of this past year, 700,000 has been turned over. And right now, there's 40,000 acres sitting with Canada as well to be able to go through this process. The department has targeted 12,000 acres per year to be able to turn over to TLE. We've already exceeded that target as of today. We're at 15,000 acres that have been turned over. So we're far exceeding the target that we set because that was a kind of a really aggressive approach that we wanted to do in terms of being able to expedite the process. But it was something that was, again, I mean, I talk about many welcome kind of things that our government is being able to do. So the engagement on TLE process, and I cite significant conversations that I've had with Chief Gordon Bluesky from Broken Head, who has an extensive TLE background as well prior to him being able to serve as chief of his community. So we rely on some of the input, some of the knowledge. Again, it's also not about reinventing the wheel in a lot of cases. So there's a lot of things that have taken place that have stalled the TLE process, and we've had the conversation as to how we can expedite some of those things. I don't want to say easy wins, but how can we kind of get past some of the simple hurdles that may have existed from between governments and the TLE communities as well. So we've had those conversations to how we can best do that. It's a learning curve for a lot of us. So, but it's something we're willing to take on because as I mentioned, as per our mandate letter, being able to expedite the TLE process does not necessarily mean doing it quickly for the sake of doing it. It's also about doing it the right way. So as our government, we want to be able to do things the right way. But some of the targets that we put forth for ourselves internally, we're exceeding those targets, and we're going to continue to do so.
The Honourable Member for Lakeside.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And yeah, I would just in a matter of time, I know we don't have much here, but if the Minister could clarify, and you certainly could do it as an undertaking, just since the NDP took over, what those acres were, since the new government, what those acres were as Crown lands and what they were as non-Crown lands, and give me some numbers that way. Has there been any discussions regarding a First Nations-led corporation engaged in power generation with the department? And would such a corporation fall under the purview of Indigenous economic development?
The Honourable Minister.
Just to kind of get back to the TLE question, some of the work that's been done by our government as well. When I spoke about we had a target of 12,000 acres to be able to turn over, and we're actually at 15,000 as of today, which is significant steps. It's a 50% increase over what was done previous government as well. I mean, they had in 2022, 2023, just over 10,000 acres being able to turn down that whole year. So we've already exceeded that to be able to expedite that process. So it's something we're very proud of and something we'll continue to be proud of. To the members' question on the potential partnerships on companies, whether it be wind or energy or what have you, when we, as a new government, when we stood up our energy policy, and even as early as this morning on our critical mineral strategy, Indigenous engagement was a priority in both of those strategies that we're bringing forward. So when we first stood up the department, there was a lot of conversation about what type of business for Indigenous communities, what type of business they wanted to be able to get into, or they wanted to be able to kind of develop or further develop, because there's a lot of things that were already significantly off the ground by Indigenous communities. So on the energy side of things, there was a lot of conversation that have taken place with a number of proponents, a number of First Nation partnerships that they've created amongst themselves, a lot of standalone communities as well. But it's something that we all take in. And for us, it's very exciting to be able to know that Indigenous communities are at the table, are wanting to come to the table, and what can we do as a government to help kind of support, but also encourage and engage. So when we talk about the energy policy and the critical mineral strategy, some of that goes hand in hand, some of it is a standalone. But for us, it's to be able to have that engagement. So I'm very proud of the fact that we stood up that department and we created this partnership with Indigenous communities to really kind of engage what that is. And I don't think I'm sharing any secrets for the committee here when we talk about Manitoba being a very have province, whether it be on the critical mineral side or on the energy side as well. And we're a leader. We're a leader across not just Canada, but internationally when it comes time to being able to clean renewable energy. So that's something that we have in abundance, and we want to be able to kind of create and develop in partnership with our Indigenous communities, and they're at the table too. On a number of different factors, whether it be on wind, whether it be on different types of energy, or whether it be just on economic development in general. And I cite Nawe Odana, the former Capion Barracks site, as a real leader. And you're going to see that when it comes time to turning it into our largest urban reserve in Canada, and the economic weight that it's going to carry, not just for the city of Winnipeg, the province of Manitoba, but for Canada in general. So it's significant for us to be able to have those conversations, how we can partner with them as well. But when it comes time to specific to the question about the energy side of things, those are conversations that are ongoing, and it's very exciting to see those opportunities exist for our Indigenous communities.
The honourable member for Lakeside.
I have no further questions or comments, Honourable Chair.
Seeing no further questions at this time, Resolution 20.2, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $13,512,000 for Indigenous economic development, Indigenous economic partnerships for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2025. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 20.3, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not, the word sum exceeding is missing. Okay.
A sum not exceeding.
A sum not exceeding 60. Let's try that from the top. Resolution 20.3, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $67,500,000 for Indigenous economic development loans and guaranteed programs for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2025. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. The last item to be considered for the estimates of this department is 20.1A, the minister's salary contained in Resolution 20.1. At this point, we respectfully request the minister's staff leave the table for the consideration of this last item. The floor is open for questions. This completes the estimates of Resolution 20.1. Resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $497,000 for Indigenous economic development, administration, and finance for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2025. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. This completes the estimates of the Department for Indigenous Economic Development and the estimates in this section of the Committee of Supply. Therefore, committee rise.